Okay, good. All right, I killed that VPN. Maybe that'll make it a little bit better. Sweet. All right, I'm going to go ahead and get started. First off, let me say hello to everybody else watching this here live stream. I am Pruitt, digital content creator, sharing a little bit of tips and tricks and all of that good stuff that I have learned over the years to help make you a better content creator. And I got a little message earlier today about Photoshop, and they said, hey, you got any tips for somebody to get rolling in Photoshop? They're brand new, and they're trying to figure out what to do, yada yada yada. And I was getting ready to say, yeah, go check out my channel. I got yada 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 in this video and that video. But when I thought about it, all of my videos on Photoshop are not necessarily geared towards a brand new fresh person opening up the app. So I said, well, let me just go live this weekend, and we'll do a little walkthrough, if you will, of Photoshop and just get you acclimated to it, and just go from there. We won't do a lot of editing or anything like that, but we'll just walk through the ins and outs fairly quickly, not too long, and we'll just go from there. All right. First, let me say that Photoshop is very, very robust. People assume that Photoshop is a photo editor. It's not a photo editor. It's a photo editor and then some. Artists use Photoshop to paint digitally. You can use Photoshop to edit photos. You can use Photoshop to make composites and things like that. I mean, it is huge when it comes to the possibilities inside of Photoshop. So when you first see it, it can be pretty intimidating. It still intimidates me, and I've been using it for a couple of years now. But let's go ahead and fire it up. I'll switch on over to my other screen here. All right, so you guys should see my Photoshop screen. Now, this is the main screen when you first open it up, and the key to understand is this screen can be customized a gazillion ways. If you look at it, you have a bunch of different little panels. I'm gonna put my mouse over here. You see this little tab that says color. I can click on it and it'll bring this up. And if I don't want it there, I can drag it and move it over here if I feel like it, or do the same thing with these. And if I don't want it right there and feel like putting it up top, I can try to just dock it up top or things like that, or put it over on this other side. And you'll notice there's this blue line showing on the left because I'm just sitting it over there. So when you see Photoshop in different videos, different YouTube videos, see, now I don't want this. I need to get that out of there. There we go. When you see Photoshop in different YouTube videos, don't assume that your Photoshop is going to look like what you see on YouTube, because you can change it to so many different layouts. You can even update the color scheme by going to the edit menu, preferences, and you can look at all of these different changes that you can make inside of it. For me, I clicked on this interface option and I've switched from this dark mode. Normally I used to be like this here in this sort of gray. I switched over to white, and I did that for my own personal reasons. Specifically, I think the white screen, let me see if I can switch that. I think the white version or lighter version of Photoshop makes it easier for me to comprehend how my images will look on a mobile device, or how it will look online, because a lot of the social media and online sites, they have bright white backgrounds, and it just helps for me to see, get a rough idea what it would look like with this ambient white or brighter color around my image. So that's neither here nor there. That's, if you want to change yours, you can just go to the edit menu and go to the preferences and play around with all of that. But we're not going to get into that. This is for beginners. Okay. All right. So you have the main menu, main toolbar over here on the left-hand side. The most typical things that you would deal with is the brush tools and the editing tools and crop tools. Okay. So If you hover your mouse over this panel here, you'll get a little pop-up like that that shows you what's going on. But notice there's this little B right there, and that's because that's the shortcut key. And over time, you'll start to learn the shortcuts for the different options. Like right here, this is a frame tool, which I never use. That shortcut is K. This right here is a rectangular marquee tool where I basically can just draw a little rectangle. Shortcut is M. So if I move my mouse out here into the middle, okay, you see it right there. If I hit B, notice the cursor is going to change. Well, probably not because I don't have an image. Sorry about that. Let's put this back. All right. Let's start by opening a picture. All right, so I'll just open a random picture here. Let me find something. Let's see, exports. We'll go with something that I've already processed, so it doesn't really matter. Let's start with the dog. There. And let me zoom in a little bit. Okay, so now if you see my cursor here, it currently has the little reticule on it. So that says that I'm in the move option, or V shortcut, but I want to change it to the brush tool. So I'm going to hit B on the keyboard. B is in brush, and that changes the cursor. All right, so now the brush tool allows me to paint in color, if you will. And if you look here on your toolbar, you'll see that you have a different way to pick colors. Just click on it like that. This is what they call the foreground color. You can grab whatever color you want. Photoshop gives you a ton of different color options and shades and so forth. If you even know the hex code, you can type in the hex code, like I think that's white, you know, stuff like that. This field right here is useful if you find a particular brand or something like that online. They'll give you what their hex codes are, so you can perfectly match what those colors are in your project. But that's just a way to change your paintbrush color. Okay, so I'll click OK, and it changed it to that color. And if I click with my mouse, I'm going to paint over the top of this image, just like that. Yay. It's like I said, Photoshop is not just a photo editor. There's people that use this as a digital art canvas. Okay, so I'm going to undo all of that. Simply Control Z, or if you're on a Mac, it's Command Z to undo. Now, if you look over here on this right hand side, when I opened this image up, it gave us this layer. All right, you see this tab says layer, and it gave us this layer. There's a little padlock right there, and it says background. This is basically locking down your image and making everything what they call destructive. In Photoshop, you can work non-destructively if you choose. You do that by having multiple layers, and you can just work and edit on the image however you see fit. And you can keep that bottom layer just off to itself as like a safety zone, because if you screw up something and you can't go back but so far, you always have this bottom layer right here to start all over again. So that's working non-destructively. So use layers in this layer panel to do the non-destructive editing flow. And the best way to do that is to duplicate your background layer and start from there. You can duplicate it a couple ways. You can just right click on it, say duplicate layer. Excuse me. You can right click on it, say duplicate layer, or you can go up to this layer menu up top and say duplicate there. Or you can do a shortcut. It's Command J or Control J, I believe. Yeah, I think it's Control J. So I'm going to just do Control J, and it duplicates it like that. So shortcuts, you'll learn them over time. I will stick a link in the description of this video that will give you all of the shortcuts and a nice little infographic that'll help you get started. But now we have a duplicated layer, and if I want, I can unlock this layer just by clicking on it, which allows me to move it around and so forth. But I'm still working non-destructively. For example, let's go back to this layer 1 and make sure it's highlighted. And I got my brush tool, and I'm just going to brush over the dog, just like that. Oh crap, that looks bad. If I turn this layer off by clicking on this little eyeball over here, it takes me back to my first layer. So I know I'm safe. If I turn it back on, this lets me know I'm only working on this particular layer, this top layer, or layer 1. Okay. You can use layers to do a bunch of different things. You can put text, you can put shapes, you can create blank layers and throw stuff in them. They have this menu at the very bottom right there that says new layer. Of course, there's a shortcut for it. I think it's Control N, but I'm just going to click new layer like that. And you notice that it just gives me a brand new blank layer. If I turn off these layers like that, it only leaves me with this blank canvas and a transparent background. All right, so let's paint on it like that. No, actually, let me do it this way. Let's paint on the bottom like so, on that blank layer. And now if I turn on these other layers, you notice the paint is still on the bottom. That's because these layers they take different dynamics as far as their position in this layer panel. So now just think about it this way. Layer 0 right here is on the very bottom. Layer 1 is in the middle. Layer 2 is on the top. So whatever's on the top is what you're going to see first as far as your rendering goes. If I wanted to drag this top layer down to the middle, that puts it below this other layer, layer 1. So now this layer is the top version that you see. And you notice that little line that I painted on the bottom, you don't see it anymore. Now granted, if I turn that layer off, you can see it. But because this is on the top layer and I move this top layer down to be in the middle, you're not going to see it. Okay. Also, if I turn off the top layer, you'll see it above our bottom layer. So just again, that's fairly elementary with the way layers work. It's just however you stack them up is how you're going to be able to visualize them on your screen. There's a catch to that though. With these layers, you have what they call blend modes right there. Notice this says normal blend mode. As you change through the blend modes, you get different effects. So if I go down to this dissolve, you're not going to see too much because these different blend modes have different effects depending on color, luminosity, light, dark. It's a lot of different effects in there. But if you just move your mouse, you'll see the differences that all of those blend modes have. Some of the common blend modes that you'll use in the future will be stuff like screen, overlay, soft light, hard light. Those are really common. Linear light is another common one. But these other ones, darken and multiply, every now and then. It sort of depends. For example, when you click on screen, all that's doing is taking the light portions of that particular layer and making it visible. Okay, so that allows the bottom layers to shine through the top layer. Now if I can still turn these off and on, it's no biggie, just like so. So that's what the original layer looked like, but since it's in a screen blend mode, it's only going to represent showing the brightest colors and lighting on that layer. So then when I click layer 2, I can still see layer 2 now. And I can also see layer 3 as it blends through that color that was painted on layer 1. And that's something that you can play around with over time. The blend modes can be very confusing, but my best advice on dealing with blend modes is the updated version of Photoshop, which is Photoshop CC 2019, allows you to just hover over these blend modes and it'll give you a preview. So it makes it a little bit easier to figure out what exactly you want to do with your particular project. Okay. All right, so I'm going to get rid of these layers. I'm just going to shift click on them to get them both, and then I'll just hit the delete key, and I'm just going to get rid of them. Well, delete key usually works. If it doesn't, you can just say delete layers, and they're gone. There. All right, so let's keep this layer here. This will still be our base layer, so I want to be non-destructive, but I want to, let's do this. Let's duplicate it again. Again, I can just right click on it. You can't afford Photoshop? Sorry to hear that, Reginald. Right now, Photoshop is $10 a month. You can get a free trial. I believe I have links in this video description that lets you get Photoshop for a free trial, and you want to try it out, you can get it for $10 a month. There's a link in the description and you can try it out. I always tell people that for $10 a month, that usually means just cutting something out. And this day and age, the $10 a month is 2 cups of coffee that you buy at the coffee house or something like that, you know. $50 a month, yeah, that's getting a little pricey, but $10 a month, I don't know about you, but I piss away $10 a month on so many different things that it's just senseless for me not to have Photoshop for $10 a month. Okay, all right, I'm off my soapbox now. So let's go ahead and we'll duplicate this layer again. Again, we could right click on it and do so, or you can drag it down to where it says new layer, and it duplicates it just like so. So let's play around with what they call layer mask. Layer mask allow you to put a mask over the top of the layer that you're working on, basically hiding everything below it is what it actually does. Okay, and then if you want to reveal the stuff below it, you just go in and cut away the stuff on that mask. Let me show you. I can probably show you better than I can explain it. So there's a layer mask icon down here, and it's this little thing. You click on that, and you notice it puts this extra little box on your layer. Okay, that's your actual layer mask, and the color of this layer mask right now is white. And to work with layer masks, you're going to have to be using a paintbrush that's either a white brush or black brush. But for this example, I'm going to make a mess on top of this image. So let's go back and use our paintbrush. We'll put this red color on the paintbrush, press B, and we're going to paint on the dog's eyes like so. All right, so we got red eyes on this here dog for whatever reason, but I want to make his eyes be visible but put red around his eyes. So let's just use this here layer mask. So you go over to your layer that has the mask on it, and you click on that box. Just click one time to make sure it's highlighted, and then you go back to your brush tool. So just click B, and you want to make sure that your brush has the colors of black or white. Okay, so right now my brush color is white. If I start to paint right here, nothing is going to happen, because remember, a white layer mask is going to be covering up everything that's below it. So you want to basically punch a hole in it by painting black. So I'm going to change that color to black just by clicking this little arrow like that. So that switches it to black. So now when I paint right here, what should happen is I'll be able to see his eyes like so. Okay, so I just wanted to give him a little bit of red paint around his eyes, not on his eyes. Okay, what essentially happened is if you look over here on this layer mask icon, you'll see that little black spot. That's from me painting black onto this image. And what that did was revealed what was underneath that mask. And what's underneath that mask is layer 0. Okay, so layer 0 looks like that. Layer 0 copy looks like this. It had him painted. And now you see, once I got rid of layer 0 on the bottom, you see that it's just transparent because I painted away on top of the layer mask only to reveal what would be underneath. And in this case, his eyeball is underneath. And if you find that you make a mistake, all you got to do is just paint it back. Paint it back with white. So I'm going to switch back to a white brush, and I can cover it back up just like so. And make sure you're doing that on top of the layer mask. Whoops. I didn't mean to do that. Cancel that. So make sure you're doing that on top of the layer mask, okay? So let me show you what would happen if I was, painting off of that. So we'll do black to reveal his eye again, like so. All right. You say, okay, that looks good, good to go. But I think I made a mistake, so I need to go back and fill in his eye a little bit. So you're going to click on, you click on that layer, and if you don't have that layer mask selected, you get all of this red and nothing else happens right there. It's cool over here, but right there in the middle where you got rid of the mask, the red is not working. So you have to pay attention when you're dealing with layer mask. So if I go back over here now, and I want to cover it up, I click white, and I can, and it brings it all back. Conversely, clicking over here and painting white, nothing happens because, again, I'm painting on top of the mask. There's no real dynamics or edit or processing to your image when you're on top of a mask. A mask is sort of the safety zone. But if I want to get rid of this red that's over here and I'm on top of the mask, I just paint it away with black and it goes away like that. And this is all non-destructive because I'm using a layer mask. Okay. So let's do this. We'll clean this up a little bit like that. And then I'll just bring the eyes back. We'll just be a little bit weird. We'll be a little bit weird. Something like that. This is just for fun. So, okay. So that's working with layer mask. Let's go back to our toolbar over here and we'll play around with some more of the basic stuff. You have this crop tool right there, which is C on the keyboard, crop tool. And cropping is very, very simple. If you want to make your image a little bit tighter as far as the perspective and things like that, you can crop it. Now you notice as I'm dragging, it is keeping a certain aspect ratio. You may not like that. I particularly don't like that. So I'm going to hit cancel up here at the top. And now I can go to that same menu bar at the top and change the cropping options. Because you'll notice you still have your little crop icon right there to the left. And it gives you all of these different options to figure out how you want to crop it. This is the popular Instagram crop. I can't talk. This is the popular Instagram crop, the 4x5. I don't want that right now either. But you can use that if you want. I typically just use original ratio because that allows me to do whatever I want with it. Well, not original, sorry. Custom is what I mean. Like that. You can just figure out your own crop. There it goes. Like that. Okay, so now if you also find that you want to make it bigger, crop tool allows you to make it bigger too. So you can just stretch it out like that. Say I wanted to put some text or something over here on the right hand side. I don't have to crop it to make it smaller. I can use the crop tool to make it bigger and just hit OK. And it gives me this extra bit of real estate to work with over here. All right, so let's say I wanted to put like some text or what have you over there, but if I start typing, I can't. I need to put my text tool. So I'll go over here and click T, like so, and that brings up the text tool, and I will start typing something. We'll just say hello, like that. Click the little checkbox at the top, and you're good to go. Ideally, I always try to make sure I hit this little move tool, or V. That's sort of the safe key to have inside of Photoshop. You won't accidentally brush something and put colors, but you can move things around like that. It's pretty simple. Okay, so I got this text over here on the side, and if I want, just like any other text editor, whether you're in Word or something like that, you can change your fonts, you can change the colors and all of that stuff of your text. So I want to change this text to, we'll say green for the heck of it. All right, but this is on a transparent background. That looks really, really bad. We need to put some type of color in there. And you can do that by putting color on its own little layer. If you look over here in our layer panel, our text has its own little layer, just like everything else has a layer. I'm gonna turn that off and you don't see anything. But let's put some color behind this text. And again, since we're working with layers, we will create a brand new one, which is blank. But I don't want my color to be on top of the text. I want my color to be behind the text. So that means I need to shift this layer down. So we will shift layer 1 down below the text, like so. And now I'm going to turn off this text layer just so I can see a little bit better. And remember that marquee tool right there, or just M on the keyboard up here? See that? So I'm going to hit M, and it's going to allow me to draw a little rectangle. So I'll do that, just drag the mouse out, and it makes a little rectangular shape for me. You probably can't see it. See the little marching ants going around? That shows there's a selection right there. Okay. And if I want to put some color into that, there's a paintbrush tool, not a paintbrush, there's a paint bucket tool over here in this toolbar. I never use it. I always go to this edit menu, and then I select fill, and then I select fill with color. So I'm going to put, the text was green, right? So let's make the background color bluish, something like that. Click OK, click OK, and it fills it in with blue. Fairly simple. So I'm going to hit V again on my keyboard, because remember, that's our safe key. All right, and then we'll go back to our layer panel, and I'm going to turn on this text layer by clicking the little eyeball right there. And now we have color behind our text. If I move this layer, watch what happens. I'm going to move this color layer all the way to the top. And of course, it hides everything that's below it. So that's, again, understanding the concept of having layers. Move it back, and now the text is back. Okay. Are there any questions in the chat room? Appreciate people popping in and watching. Whew. May want to move my camera. Uh-oh. Oh, so we can see what you're doing with the layers. Oh, good eye. Thank you, man. That should be the view you have right there. So sorry. I was totally screwing that up. See? I'm so glad the chat room is there, because I didn't notice I did that. So sorry. Okay, so since I had that covered up, let's go ahead and I'll just rewind that. we'll go back to our layer panel over here. All right. Sorry about that, everybody. Okay, so we'll start with that text layer. And the plan was I wanted to have, better yet, let's just start over. Okay. I wanted to have this text layer show up, but have some color in the background. And the only way to do that is, well, there's a couple ways, but for me, the easy way is to put the color on its own layer and then just drop that layer up under the text. Okay. So we can either do Control N or just go down to this little icon on the bottom right and click New Layer. So now we have our brand new layer 1 sitting up here at the top, and it's blank. There's nothing there. If you want to rename it, you can just double click like that, and I'm going to say Color Fill. Okay. Some people rename their layers to sort of help, keep things organized. Okay. So now I want to put a bluish color over there. Easiest way, in my opinion, is to take a marquee tool or just press M on your keyboard. And it's going to let you draw out a little rectangle. So I'm going to actually turn off my text layer so I could see. So I'm just going to turn that little button off. And I'm going to go over here and I'm going to draw that rectangle just like so. Actually, I missed a spot. Let's try that again. Okay. Scroll down like that and let go. Thanks for the crop tool hint. I learned something new. Oh, you're welcome. I use that a lot, especially now that we have that content aware fill. That's a new feature in Photoshop. I'll show you that in a second. That's really cool. But now I have my selection made. If I zoom in a little bit, you'll see there's some marching ants. Whoops, keep hitting the wrong keyboard. You'll see there's a little bit of marching ants going around this rectangle. That's basically saying it's a selection. Okay. So now I'm going to go up to the edit menu and I'm going to select fill, and then I'm going to select color, and I'm going to pick a bluish color because we're using green as the text, and I think the blue will look better on the background. Just click OK there, click OK here, and it fills it in. Unfortunately, it looks like I missed a spot. You see that little vague transparent line there. So I'm going to do this again. So I'm going to hit M on my keyboard for my marquee tool. I'm going to draw out a rectangle like that. Edit, fill with color. And if I just click OK now, it's going to fill with the last color that I selected. There, that's better. So now, if I click over here on the layer panel and click on the text that says hello, hello doesn't show up. And that's because our color fill layer is showing on the top. And remember, with the layer stack, whatever's on the top is what's going to be visible first. So I want to move that layer down below just by dragging it. I'm going to drag it below the text layer or the hello layer and let go. And now it shows up. Okay. I can turn that color layer off. And since the text is the only thing that's on the top, I'm going to get that transparency there because it's gone. All right. But that's essentially using layers. And of course, if you're done with your selection, there's a select menu up at the top, and you can just say deselect or use the shortcut Control D. There. We have our image. All right. Any other questions? Okay, we're going to have some fun now. We're going to do some slightly advanced editing stuff. Actually, no, before we do that, let's get back to the basics. When you're editing a photograph, it's common that you're going to try to edit saturation, exposure, contrast, all of that good stuff. Photoshop has those tools inside of a menu. They're also inside of what they call adjustment layers, and it's also built inside of Camera Raw. Camera Raw is another, excuse me, Camera Raw is another filter, but it's actually just like having another application to edit your actual photograph. Ideally, it's used to open raw image files, like Canon's RAW files or Nikon's or whomever's that you're dealing with, or DNG files that you get from your smartphone. And it's a little more intuitive as far as doing like color grading and things like that. So I'm going to show you those basics of editing a photo inside of Photoshop. So let's go back to my screen. Okay, let's start with the actual menu bar up here at the top. Okay, so we'll click on image. Whoops, first I need to make sure I have my layer selected. Okay, so I got my layer selected now. So then you go to your image menu, click on adjustments. Now you see you got all of these different adjustments in here and a bunch of different shortcuts. I don't know all those shortcuts. I don't never use the shortcuts because I use another tactic in this. But let's just say we want to do exposure. We'll click that, move this little menu bar out of the way, and just crank the exposure up, and you see what happens. Okay, bring it down and you see what happens. Now notice as I'm doing this, that red is changing, the background is changing and all of that, but it's only affecting this particular layer 0 copy. That's the only thing that's being affected at the moment. Because if you remember, we had a layer mask on here, and with this layer mask, that meant layer 0's eyes are showing through and not going to be affected. So I do it like that, and it just only affects that particular layer. So let's say I want to blow out the exposure just a little bit, and just click OK, and that's it. I'm done. The problem with this is that is non-destructive. Well, I mean, I'm sorry, that is destructive. You want to operate in a non-destructive format. Making that exposure adjustment, I can't go back and redo it. I can't fix it. I'll go in and hit image, adjustments, exposure, but now I'm adjusting it from the state of overexposure. Okay, so now you can, if I crank it up more, it's just going to get even worse. And if I try to bring it back down, I'm probably not going to be able to get back to that original starting point. Notice how the eyes and the red change totally. So again, that menu option is there. Image adjustments is there, but it's destructive. I don't recommend using destructive editing. Okay, so now I'm just going to undo everything. Whoops, go back. Went too far. There. All right, so we can do non-destructive editing by using what they call adjustment layers. Adjustment layers are over here in your layer panel, and it's this little icon on the bottom. You click that, and it's pretty much got everything that you just saw under that image menu. But if I click on exposure, it gives me its own little layer. Okay, and this layer is plopped right dead in between that color fill and above the layer that we were wanting to work on. Now again, because this is on top of these other two layers, this exposure layer is going to affect everything below it. Okay, and it puts the menu for those adjustments up here in the properties tab. So if I push it down, it's taking everything down. See that? If you remember on that first one, it only affected this middle layer, so you could see the eyes and stuff still showing through. But this is an adjustment layer, and it's affecting everything below it. Now if I want to bring it back up, I could do it that way. And the beauty of it is this is non-destructive. Let's crank it up to like right about there, so it's a little bit overexposed, and I'm done. But I didn't ruin my layer. So if I want to turn off that adjustment layer and see what it looks like, it looks normal. Okay, And you notice this adjustment layer has a mask on it too. It has its own layer mask. So if you want to make an adjustment on something but then decide you want to mask out some things, you can do so just like we did on layer 0 right there. So let's say I only want to bring the exposure up around his face, not his body. I'll just click on that layer mask, grab my B for brush tool. All right. And then I'm going to paint black over here, like so. And it's just going to affect his face like that. Now I probably could have adjusted that exposure a little more to make it a little more visible to see, so let's do it that way. Actually, let me do this. Let's start over to make that example look a little bit better. Fill it with white. Where's white? Whoops. White. There. All right, so now it's overexposed, but I only want to expose his face like that. So let me hit B, paint with black on that layer mask, and I only overexpose part of his face using the layer mask on the adjustment layer. All right, so he says, not he, Jocelyn. Jocelyn says, how do you get so many undos? The undo option is now available in the latest version of Photoshop CC. Photoshop CC 2019, which was announced back in October 2018. They added the feature of undo. So Command Z, Command Z, Command Z, or if you're on Windows, Control Z, Control Z, Control Z, to as much as your heart content. I think there was another way that you can continue to go back if you're on an older version of Photoshop. I think it was Shift Control Z, I believe, because I used to use it on the older version. You can try that. I think it's Shift Control Z. I can't remember for sure. It's all muscle memory for me. It was just shortcuts. But that's why I can keep doing as many undos now. It's because Adobe updated it back in October. Good question. All right, so that's the adjustment layer. That's non-destructive. We just overexposed my dog's face and he looks horrible. Okay, so let's get rid of that adjustment layer. It never happened. Now we're going to hop into what's called the camera raw filter. And again, this is going to be just like editing a photograph, but you have to be careful because using that camera raw filter can be destructive. But there's a way around that. Right click on this, select convert to smart object. Okay, and you'll notice that icon changed. It put this little weird shape on it. So now I want to go up to filter, camera raw filter, and it's going to open up a whole new app. But notice this looks a total mess. That's because it has all of the effects of the layer that had the layer mask and all of those adjustments and things like that on it. That's something that you'll have to consider whenever you're using the camera raw filter. Consider the layer that you put in the camera raw filter on and what it can potentially affect. So I'm going to hit cancel there, and I'm going to hit undo, and I got my layer back. So now let's take layer 0, duplicate it, and I'm going to move layer 0 up right there because we're non-destructive. But let's right click it, convert to smart object, and now go into filter, camera raw filter, and it opens up a brand new application. Notice we still have that extra space on the side there, but that's okay. We can go in here and just adjust exposure, contrast, all of this stuff, just like if you were in Lightroom. Clarity. Plenty of different tools right there. You have all of these tabs at the top. This curves adjustment, stuff like that. If you want to play with the curves. This is for sharpness. If you want to make it sharp, that's way too sharp. Let's turn that down. You can play around with the HSL adjustments, which stands for hue, saturation, and luminance. Let's see, let's take the orange luminance, raise it up. Let's take this saturation here, and we'll take the blues and pump up the blues like that. So you notice the blue in the background got a little bit more visible when I did that. I'm gonna take it all the way down. The blue background goes away. When I crank this blue up, only the blue is being affected. That's the power of HSL adjustments. But that's the type of stuff that you can do inside of the Camera Raw filter. Once you're done, you just click OK, and it's going to take you back into Photoshop. Okay, so it takes me back to Photoshop, and it has my adjustments from Camera Raw filter. And then I say, you know what, this thing still doesn't look sharp enough or clear enough. Go back into that Camera Raw filter just by clicking on it in your layer panel. This only works because we made it a smart object. So we just double click on it like that, and it opens it back up. So I'll go in here and make a few more adjustments. Let's give it a little more contrast, pull that exposure down a little bit, take the shadows up some, like that, quick and dirty. Sharpness, just turn that up like that. That's too sharp. Whew. Way too sharp. Like that. Noise, detail. And we'll click OK. There. Now, that looks a little bit better. But that's using Camera Raw filter inside of Photoshop. All right. Any more questions before I show you this last little neat trick with AI? Head into the chat room. Any questions in there? Any questions? I'll open that image. Okay, so we'll go back to my screen now. No questions in the chat. All right, so that crop tool that we showed a second ago, where you can actually expand it and make your image bigger if you need to. Well, you have some artificial intelligence built in that can help you out. But first, before we do that, we're going to be non-destructive, and we're going to duplicate our layer. We're not going to just work on one layer. Be non-destructive, okay? And I'm going to zoom out a little bit so you can see better. Okay, so I'm going to hit C on my keyboard for the crop tool, and I'm going to expand it to the left just a little bit, something like that. All right, and then I'm going to hit enter on my keyboard, or I can just click the checkbox up at the top. Okay, so that's done. But we want to fill it in and give it a little more real estate, if you will. No pun intended. So let's hit our marquee tool. And actually, let's put another layer down just to be safe. Make it its own layer. And we're going to draw another little rectangle in here, like so. All right. And then we have the beauty of the content aware fill. There's a couple ways to do this. You go to the edit menu, you go to fill. That same menu that we looked at earlier pops up, but you have some drop down options. You have the foreground color, black background, yada 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 pattern, or you just say content aware. Click on that, click OK. And what did it say? Could not fill because there are not enough. Oh, I can't do it on a blank layer. Sorry. Didn't think about that. So let's undo all that. Let's get rid of that layer. That's my mistake. We'll still duplicate it just to be safe. There. All right, so I'll go back. Draw my little selection in again. And this time I'm going to draw over the edge just a little bit, just so I have a few pixels for it to think about. Fill, content aware, Click OK, and it's going to start thinking. And boom, it filled it in. That looks pretty daggum good for just a couple clicks. And you can refine that with the newer content aware fill option. So let's undo this. Like that never happened. And Photoshop updated the content aware fill back in October. So you go back to the edit menu, and where'd it go? Well, it's right there, but it's grayed out. So I did something wrong. Let's try that again. Edit. Why is my content aware fill not showing up? Oh, I need to make a selection. That's why. Do it like that, just like we did a second ago. Edit. Content aware fill instead of going to this fill option. And you're going to get a different interface. Okay. The difference with this is everything you see in green is what Photoshop is looking at. And sometimes you're going to get stuff that you don't want it to look at. So I don't necessarily need Photoshop to look at this dude right here. So I'm going to erase him away. I don't need it to look at the fence. So just erase it all away like that. But I do need it to look at this pavement. And as you're erasing, you'll notice over here in your little preview section on the right, the AI is thinking and processing and trying to figure out exactly how it's going to look. Okay, so let's say I didn't want it to look at the trees. We're just going to take all of the trees out. Just brush it away. All of the trees are brushed away. We're only wanting it to look at the pavement. It's probably going to freak out a little bit. See? So now, since it only looked at the pavement, it's assuming we want the pavement to go up the side of the image. Of course we don't want that. But that's the beauty of this tool and the AI that's built in. It allows you to, be a little more granular in what you want the selections to look like. So to paint all of that back, you'll need to hold down your Alt key and paint it back in. So I want it to look at these trees. I want it to look at this part of the pavement, like so, just like that. Then I'll let go, and it's going to think, and it puts it all back, and it looks pretty good. Just click OK, and it's done. It's not perfect, but it's pretty close. This can still be fixed, but that's not what this video is going to be about. I have other videos that walks you through doing spot healing and cloning and all of that good stuff. That's it. All right. Any questions? We're going to get up out of here. If you use the person, would you get 2 people? Well, let's see. Let's see. I never thought about that, but why not? Let's try it out. So let's do undo on my screen. Undo. We'll go back to the edit menu, content aware fill, erase out everything but old dude. Okay, what happens? No, not quite. It ended up putting, I don't know what that is. Not so sure what Photoshop is thinking there. But I think Photoshop is saying, dude, you're really screwing up this selection. Let me try to help you some. It's thinking still. You see it down there? Yeah. Well, we didn't get 2 people. But there are ways to do that. There are ways to put another person over there. But that's for another type of video. That's for a more advanced process in there. All right. Let's get on up out of here. I've held y'all's ears hostage long enough. This was fun, though. And someone said that they got something out of this, so that made my night. Glad I could help. Hey, Aunt, watching you while I man, hybrid media's in the house. I'm telling y'all right now, hybrid media consulting. If you want to see somebody that's always on the grind creating content, man, that dude is always on the grind, and he's always up at the crack of dawn getting some beautiful sunrise shots. So check him out, Hybrid Media Consulting. Go follow his Instagram. It's pretty freaking sick. He does a good job. All right, folks, y'all be good. I'm gonna get out of here. If you enjoyed this video, give me one of those likes and give me a subscribe on there. I'm trying to get to 5,000 subscribers, and your subscription will help get there. Okay, so hit that subscribe button, share this video with someone else that you think may be interested, and tell them to subscribe as well. I do a video at least once a week, if not more, and I try to just share some things that are noteworthy and helpful in the world of content creation, not just photography but videos and stuff too. All right, y'all have yourselves a good evening, have yourselves a good weekend. Take some time to rest a little bit, take some time to hang out with your family. Definitely take some time to create and dominate. All right, y'all take it easy.